bit of a larger project than we did last week. Rather than just a phrase, we're going to do an article. And where you get that article is up to you. Where I got mine was LexisNexis, which is one of the university's databases. Let me just show you quickly how to get there. So if you just go to GMU Libraries, you'll see research databases. And under research databases, there's long articles, often scholarly, but not always, aimed at various topics. And where I get mine is news and newspapers and Nexus Uni. And you'll have to use your credentials to log into this. I'm already logged in, so it's not asking for mine. But you can do a search for a article on any topic. I happen to choose the big news of the week, but you could do baking, you could do fashion, you could do anything you want will be on here, because this is a compilation of most of the most important newspapers in the country and in fact around the world. And there will be, newspapers cover just about everything from food to fashion to what's going on to local news. So your article could be about anything. You could just do let's say brownies. And there's a bunch of articles. These don't seem to be about brownies you eat mostly, but it will tell you, and we're getting some foreign ones as well, but it'll tell you usually a little bit of a preview, and it will tell you how many words it is and just a little bit about it. So, and you can click on it, and you can actually, this is a very short one, shorter than the one you'll need, but you can actually just copy and paste it, which will come with a little bit of junk. Actually, anything you do will come with a little bit of junk. Or you could download it as, which is what I did, as a Word file. But I don't need that, so I'm not going to do that. And then you also need a picture. Now, I should warn you that, let's see, I think I think this is the picture I wanted to use. Your picture can come anywhere, from anywhere. This happens to be the New York Times website, and you can grab a picture from the website just by holding down your control or your command key, I think on a PC, and just say save image as, and I'm just going to save that to my desktop. There are also the other sites and sources of free stock that I showed you. Most of them will have food if you just decide to do something food related or cake related, and you can get an image from anywhere. The one thing I should say is that computers get better every year, but one place where print has still surpassed them is with resolution. So a lot of times an image that looks fine on screen will look a little bit rough or pixelated when you put it in print. And we're not going to print these out, so that's not a concern, but it's just something to be aware of. So now that I have my assets for building this, I am going to say, let's make sure we're in InDesign, and I'm going to create a new document. And I think I'm going to accept just a regular 8.5 by 11. But I am going to do a couple of other things to this. One is I'm going to give it some columns, a column structure. And 3 columns is very typical for this size page. I'm just going to leave it at 3. 2, we see that this is facing pages, and that is really the default in InDesign, because InDesign is part of what it's for is creating long documents that are multiple pages. And so InDesign just assumes you're creating a multiple page document, unlike Illustrator or Photoshop. And then it also gives you margins, and maybe I'll just unlock these so they could be different, and I'll just make the top margin a little bit bigger, just so I haven't accepted the default, so I'll just make that a 4 pica margin. And I should say that picas are very traditional with typography. I tend to work in picas on my own projects, but you may well see inches when you are creating yours. And the thing about picas is there is 6 of them in an inch. But so they're compatible with inches, they're just not quite the same. They can take a while to get used to if you're not used to working with them. So I will say create. So 3 pica is a 1/2 inch margin, and I just made the top one a little bit bigger. And there's my page, and I happen to pick a fairly long article, so I think I'm going to need more than 1 page. So I am just going to drag from my A master. Ignore this little guy up here. You want to grab your A master. No, I'll just bring down another 2 pages. So now I have my front page and a spread that is following that page. So now I'm going to bring in my text. So I'm going to take my text tool and draw a text frame. And I'm going to say place. And usually I would use the key command for this. There is no key command for bringing in something from another program in Photoshop or Illustrator. You have to do this manually, but in InDesign there is, because so much of what you're doing is bringing in content that a writer created or an editor created, and images that a photographer created, or maybe you created yourself. So it goes to right there. I'm going to go to my desktop, and here is the text I brought down from LexisNexis, and I'm just going to open that up. And it comes in with a little bit of junk. So I'm going to grab this handle, make this frame a little bit bigger, delete that one, and get rid of some of this junk. I don't have the article yet, but I do have a little square box on this frame, which is telling me that it is overflowing. So I'm going to forward delete. And here is the article. Has a little bit more junk I need to get rid of. These extra words, I'm just going to leave the headline. And this is what I think is the deck. Some people would call it a subhead, but most people working in the field would not. And let's see, we have a couple of other things going on here. Is I have an extra return between paragraphs, and I want to get rid of that. And I've got like a little bit of space at the beginning of those paragraphs. That's probably not big enough for a proper indent. So I'm going to do a little bit more of cleaning that up. The first thing I'm going to do is I am going to run a script. So if this is not visible on yours, you can go to Windows, Utilities, Scripts, and find it. But I do this so often that I just have it here when I script labels, not scripts. And you may have to scroll to find it, but this is the script I use most. And this is just find change by list. And I'm going to click that. And it got rid of some of the junk, but not all of it. So let me turn on my hidden characters. So in fact, I don't have extra space between, an extra return between paragraphs. These are just spread out. So I want to undo that. So I'm going to say Command A. And I'm going to go to my paragraph tools, and under space after, if we were here, oh, it's space above is what they're doing. So there's 10 points between paragraphs. So I'm going to say Command A, and I'm just going to turn these both into zeros. I may want to change some of those back later on, but for now I want them to be 0. And let's look at this a little bit closer. So the other thing I have going on is some highlighting here. So I think what I'm going to do is Command A, and I'm going to go back to my text controls, and Times New Roman, I'm going to just change it to regular. And for the underline, And give it all an underline and then take it away. And so now this is cleaner looking text. Now the other thing I don't have for this is an indent. Generally you have to indicate your paragraph some way, and you do it either with space between paragraphs or with an indent. So I'm going to select all of this and go back to my paragraph. This is showing me sort of, it's a little bit inconsistent how this works, and you will see more commands up here depending on the size of your screen. But I am going to give this a indent of, let's say, P10. And so now these are indented and they look sort of like newspaper paragraphs. This came in at 10-point size. The thing to know about working on screen is things can look smaller than they would actually print if you were printing them, but 10 points is pretty good, pretty typical for a text font. And we have 13 points between lines. That means that if I was to draw a line between the bottom of that line and the bottom of that line, this box should be just about 13 points tall. And that's a leading. So this would be 2 points of additional leading, or 3 points of additional leading. I think I'm going to change that back to 12. So I'll just make it 10 on 12. Now you may also see auto. We talked about auto lead last time, but that might be a possibility too. So however you get your text, and it could be a paper you wrote, it could be anywhere. It usually does require a little bit of cleanup, but this is now looking okay. You are free to change the typeface. Times is a pretty good typeface for text type. Maybe I will just change mine to Publico Text Roman and leave it at that. Now, if we get down to here, we notice that there's this box here is still red, and that means this article is still overflowing this box. Now, I want to be able to work with this text in a way that it flows from frame to frame. So I'm going to flow this text from this one frame to another one that doesn't exist yet. And it's still overflowing. So I can just flow this out just by clicking on this, and it fills my cursor with the little text, which is just the same words that are in the beginning, and I can flow this out to the rest of my pages. And if you get bored with this, you can also just hold down your shift button and it will draw the rest of those all at once. And we come to the end of the article and there's a little bit more junk. Let's just get rid of that junk. And there it is. So now I want to make this page look like the start of an article. So in addition to flowing text forward, I can actually also flow text backwards by clicking on the corresponding box. There's one here for the flow that way, and there's one here for the flow backwards. And I am going to draw that box out. And that brings in more of the text than I want. So I can either just copy and paste this into a different box. I could say Apple X and paste it into a different box, or I could keep it in this box. Need to be with my type cursor to get that in there. Or I could just leave it in this box, and I could put a special character, which on a Mac is command return. I'm sorry. No, that's quick apply, something else. Okay, let's just do it with the copy and paste way. Let's get rid of that. Let's get rid of this box. And let me just draw a new box here and paste that inside. So I'm going to make this look like a headline and what a newspaper or magazine designer would call a deck. So I think I'm going to keep it in Politico, but this time I'm going to make it Politico headline. And because this is a headline, I also don't need the indent. So I am just going to get rid of that indent. And I think I want to keep this both black, not the color it came in, on. And I'm going to make this big. Oh, and you can just do that up here or with your drop-down menu, or with the key commands that we discussed last week. I was just using the key commands. I'm also using the key command for increasing the leading. You can see the numbers go up here, but I'm holding down my option key and my down arrow. So let's make this a little bit smaller so it fits on one line. And I may have to make it smaller again. Let's make it bold. And let's put that in a sans serif. Often decks and headlines are in contrasting fonts. And if your article does not have a deck, that's fine. I'm just going to put format line as long as I have it. Make that a little bit bigger and let it out a little bit. And you can do that manually here or through the key commands. And in display type, I usually like getting rid of my hyphens. And so I'm going to put a little bit of space. I'm just going to hold down my shift key this time and hit my return. That is what's called a soft return. And I'm also going to make this flush left. This all came in from my source. It may be already flush left from your source, but this came in justified, which means the lines go all the way to the end of the line. But in this case, I want it to be flush left. But your article can be whatever you want. In fact, it could be centered. You wouldn't really see text like that. You would almost always see text either justified or flush left. I am just going to keep this justified so it stays newspapery. And I can also, we got rid of a little bit of extra lead. I think I'm just going to add a little bit of extra lead between these paragraphs. So the deck is a little bit further away. So this is a fairly gray page. Let's move this a little bit closer to the headline. And almost always on a page, you wouldn't just see this much text on a page. You would see some manner of, I lost a little bit of my deck. Let's just bring that back. Move that a little bit further away again. You would see a little bit of a picture. And so I am going to bring in a picture. And you could do this the same way, either Command D or just go place. And I think that's the picture I selected, I downloaded. So there it is in the box. And if we click on the box, we have two things going on. One, we have this picture, which is inside the box, and we can move that independently of the box. And you can do that either by grabbing this little thing that looks like an eye, or by this is one of the things you could do with the direct select tool in InDesign. It works the same way if you were drawing a vector as it would in Illustrator, but you can also use it to do the content. This is the only way you can adjust the content. But you can also resize the box with your black arrow. So we could grab this box and we can make the box bigger, or we could even make it go all the way across. Or if this was a print project, we could even make it go off the page, and that's what's called a bleed, if it goes off the page. Most newspapers can't do that, but most magazines will bleed pictures occasionally. And if you see a full page ad, it's what's called bleeding off the page. So we can also resize this picture within the box. And right now it is so big that I'm not even seeing the edges of it. But what I can do is I can go to Object, Fitting, and we could say Fit Content Proportionally. and that puts the picture in the box. Now if I want to adjust that, I can go back to my direct selection tool and I could grab that page and move it individually. But you have to be careful when you do this because it's easy to distort that picture. So if you hold down the shift key while you do this, your picture will stay proportional. So it's a good idea if you're using that rather than the fitting option under object to always fit the frame proportionally. So I like that size, and I think I'm going to take that down to 2 columns. Whoops, wrong thing. Make sure we have the frame. Let's take that down to 2 columns. Let's leave the bleed. And the trouble with this picture is it is covering up the text. There's a lot of the text I can't see. So there are a couple of ways to do that. One, you could just move the box out of the way. And because these boxes are all threaded together, when I move this box, the text is just going to flow throughout the rest of this document. Or I could give this picture, and we're going to talk more about this in the future week and some of the things you can do with wraps. I can also give this box a wrap. And if you go to text wrap, or you can also do it here, and just click this button. Right now it's showing me a little icon with the text rolling over the picture or the picture rolling over the text. I can select this, and that's going to push the text, if you saw it jitter, off the picture. And so these two are not lining up. To get them to line up, I can give this a little bit of extra space around it in my text wrap. So I can just push, and these might be locked by default on yours, but I keep them unlocked. I could just push that so those lines line up. So one of the things I have here that I don't like is a orthen, this end of a paragraph on a line by itself. So I'm going to take this paragraph and I'm going to do just what we did last week with the kerning, is I'm going to hold down my option key and just squeeze it a little bit, and that did not get rid of it. It actually gave me another one. So instead, let's undo that and just spread that out a little bit. This is what a typographer would call a widow, when you have just a really short word or a part of a word on a line by itself. So I'm just going to spread that out to get rid of it. And then I'm just going to put a little bit more of a buffer between the picture and the start of my text to get rid of those orphans. And my text is not, well, now it's looking pretty good. It's lining up across the bottom. There are more advanced things you can do with InDesign to get that to happen. Just a little bit more of that picture. So that is what I'm asking you to do this week. I would say go ahead and kern your headline after you bring it in, like we did last week, to make the spacing nice. I'm not sure I would bother kerning a deck this long. Is to create a design page with at least a picture, some text, and a headline on it. And as far as the overflow pages, the spill pages, if you want to go ahead and design those, bring another picture in, you can, but you don't have to. You could just leave these the way they are. What the main thing I'm going to be looking for is this page that has a picture, a headline, maybe a deck, and some formatted text.